In 1911, in the mist-covered mountains of Oaxaca, the remote village of San Miguel del Río vanished. Not burned, not abandoned over months, but emptied in a single morning. When a traveling mail courier arrived at 9:40 a.m., he found boiling pots still hanging over fires, doors half open, tools left mid-task, washing lines full of drying clothes, but no people. Not a single one of the 87 residents remained. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away, no hurried packing, no blood, no broken objects. Even the village dogs were gone. Inside the homes, everything looked as if families had simply risen from their chairs and stepped out, never to return. Breakfast tables were set. A child's school slate had half-written numbers. A sewing needle was frozen halfway through a garment. Most disturbing of all, a blacksmith's forge still glowed red, as if he had stepped away only seconds earlier. Over the next 2 weeks, search parties, rural police, and local farmers scoured the mountains. They found no tracks, no bodies, no smoke from camps, and no explanation. This is the complete reconstruction of the morning San Miguel del Río. An entire village evaporated. High in the Sierra Norte of Oaxaca, remote communities lived quietly on terraced hillsides and dirt roads that wound like threads between the pines. These were villages where everyone knew every neighbor, every child, every animal. San Miguel del Río was one of them. A tiny isolated settlement known more for its silence than anything else. 40 adobe houses, a single chapel, a communal well, and a dirt road that led nowhere except to a logging trail used twice a month. In 1911, Mexico was in the middle of political turmoil, but San Miguel del Río felt far removed from the noise of revolution. Life there moved with predictable rhythm. Dawn chores, midday meals, evening gatherings around firelight. People depended on each other, and the idea that 87 individuals would all leave at once was unthinkable. But on the morning of August 16th, that is exactly what happened. The courier, Rodolfo Esparza, arrived to deliver letters and supplies. What he found forced him to drop his satchel. Silence. A silence so deep it drowned the sound of his own footsteps. A silence that felt wrong, heavy, unnatural. He walked house to house calling out names. Doña Clara? Don Mateo? No answer. What he discovered next formed one of the most disturbing reports ever documented in rural Oaxaca. Before we begin the investigation, please subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And tell me, from which city and country are you listening today? Rodolfo Esparza had ridden the mountain trail many times. He knew San Miguel del Río like an old friend. The way smoke rose from kitchens at dawn, the sound of roosters calling out, the laughter of children chasing each other near the chapel. But as he entered the village that morning, something struck him immediately. The birds were not singing. The air felt unusually cold for August. The kind of chill that rose from the ground rather than fell from the sky. He called out, "Buenos dias." His voice echoed unnaturally, as if bouncing off walls further away than they actually were. He approached the first house, the home of Doña Clara and her 2 daughters. The door was ajar. A pot of beans simmered softly over embers. On the table, 3 half-filled clay cups of atole sat untouched. A chair was knocked over, not violently, just as if someone had stood up too quickly. The beds were made. Clothing was neatly folded, but the entire house felt frozen in time. He checked the next home, that of the blacksmith, Don Julian. The forge was still glowing a dull red. A hammer lay mid-swing on the anvil, as if dropped an instant earlier. His leather apron hung on the wall. His boots were by the door. Yet Don Julian was nowhere in sight. House after house revealed the same unsettling scene. Fires still burning, meals half prepared, children's toys on the ground, water buckets full, laundry flapping in the mild wind. It appeared the villagers had not planned to leave. They had expected to return in seconds, but they never did. Rodolfo finally reached the central square, normally bustling. Today it was lifeless. He felt something tighten in his chest. He dropped to his knees and touched the earth. It was colder than the morning air, as if the ground itself had been drained of warmth. He ran to the chapel. Inside, candles flickered weakly. A rosary lay on the floor, as if someone had let it fall from trembling hands. And there, near the back pew, lay the most chilling clue of all. A small child's sandal, perfectly clean, with no matching footprints anywhere in or outside the church. Rodolfo mounted his horse and rode to the nearest settlement, screaming for help. By midday, news of the vanished village had reached the district authorities. The search began. Within hours, more than 60 men, farmers, loggers, rural police, rode into San Miguel del Rio carrying lanterns, rifles, and machetes. Their first assumption was a mass kidnapping, possibly by bandits fleeing from revolutionary forces. But that theory collapsed almost immediately. There were no tracks. Not one. The dirt roads surrounding the village captured prints easily. Horses, mules, dogs, boots. But on the morning the villagers vanished, the soil was untouched. The last human prints were from Rodolfo's arrival. Searchers moved systematically. First circle, all homes and yards. Nothing. Second circle, 500 meters. Farms, stables, fields of maize. Nothing. Third circle, 1 kilometer. Ravines, logging paths, riverbanks. Nothing. Every time they reached a new area, the same detail repeated. The ground was cold. The air was still. No insects buzzed, no birds sang. Something had silenced the landscape itself. A farmer named Manuel Rosas walked toward a well and immediately stopped. "Listen," he whispered. The others tried, but there was no sound at all. No wind, no distant animals, no rustling of trees. It was as if the world around San Miguel del Rio had been muted. While examining the well, they found another clue. A metal bucket, halfway lowered, swaying slightly, even though there was no breeze. The search expanded into the nearby pine forest. They expected to find at least one path, one line of footsteps, one sign of large movement. But the pine needles were undisturbed, not crushed, not shifted, not parted. The village had vanished as one, but left no trail. When night fell, something even more disturbing happened. Several men claimed they heard soft footsteps behind them, slow, steady, gentle. But when they turned, no one was there. The next morning, the district police drew the same conclusion Rodolfo had reached. This was no ordinary disappearance. Not even a forced evacuation could happen without tracks. And yet San Miguel del Rio had emptied itself completely. Over the following days, investigators documented every home in the village, cataloging the items left behind. What they found contradicted every known pattern of human flight. In the carpenter's house, wood shavings lay in a perfect semicircle at the craftsman's feet, as if he had been shaping a chair leg seconds before, and simply gone. In the midwife's home, linen soaked in warm water suggested she had been preparing for a birth. A pot of herbs still steamed faintly, 4 hours after Rodolfo first arrived. In the teacher's hut, half the classwork for the day had already been written on the board. Simple arithmetic problems and a drawing of a sun rising over a hillside. The chalk was broken on the floor. In the chief's house, a ledger sat open on the table, marking grain distributions. His pen had dried in a single dot, as though held over the page for one heartbeat too long. But not one item seemed disturbed by violence. No sign of struggle, no blood, no overturned furniture, no torn clothing. Even the livestock pens stood strangely empty. Goats, chickens, 2 mules, all gone. But the gates were closed from the inside. One cabin, belonging to the Garcia family, held the most unsettling detail. On the wall, written in charcoal, were 3 words. "Ya vienen otra vez." They are coming again. Below it, a handprint, small, child-sized, smeared downward. Investigators debated whether this was written before or after the disappearance. No conclusion was reached, but every person who saw it felt the same cold pressure in their chest. The village had not fled. The village had been taken. As word spread, outsiders, priests, historians, indigenous elders, arrived with their own explanations. Authorities first blamed Revolution-era bandits, but bandits leave. Boot prints, horse tracks, drag marks, overturned furniture, stolen items, none of these existed. A local official proposed sudden toxic gas from underground vents, but experts found no dead animals, no collapsed bodies, no signs of suffocation, fire still burning normally. Zapotec elders from nearby villages shared something more chilling. They said San Miguel del Rio sat on a zone called La Boca del Aire, the mouth of the air, a place where the world breathes in, not out. According to legend, every few generations, the land exhales silence and inhales life, pulling entire communities into places where time does not pass. The elders insisted this had happened before. In 1851, another village, San Gabriel del Monte, had also emptied itself without traces, and before that, in 1794, a small valley community vanished, leaving only burning torches and empty beds. But the most unsettling detail came from an elderly woman named Abuela Tadea, who arrived on the 5th day of the investigation. She examined the cold earth, the empty houses, the chapel, and whispered, "No murieron, no huyeron, no están, y no volverán iguales." They didn't die. They didn't flee. They are not here, and they will not return the same. Searchers did not understand what she meant. Not until the 7th night. On the 7th night after the disappearance, several men standing guard in the village square heard something faint, a distant echo of voices carried by the wind. It sounded like murmuring or prayer or chanting. They followed the sound toward the ridge south of the village. What they saw made one man drop his lantern. Lights. Dozens of small lights moving slowly along the hillside. They looked like torches, but they moved in absolute silence. The lights glided in a line, steady, synchronized, unnatural. Too smooth to be human footsteps, too silent to be animals. One guard insisted he recognized the pattern of lanterns the villagers used during festivals. He whispered, "Those are their lights. Those are our people's lights." But when the men rushed up the ridge, the lights vanished instantly. Without fading, without drifting, without smoke, the ground was untouched. No footprints, no ash, no smell of fire. The next morning, investigators found a new detail back in the village. A single wooden toy, a child's spinning top, resting on the chapel steps. It had not been there before, and beneath it, faintly impressed in the dirt, was the shape of a bare footprint. Small, clean, fresh. Too fresh for a village that had been empty for a week. The footprint pointed back toward the forest, and nowhere else. The disappearance of San Miguel del Río remains one of the most haunting, unsolved vanishing cases in Mexican history. In a single morning, an entire community, families, children, elders, livestock, slipped out of the world without a trace. Fires kept burning, tools lay mid-use, meals stayed warm. No tracks led in or out, and no body was ever found. Whether the people of San Miguel were victims of a force of nature not yet understood, a silent catastrophe, or the ancient phenomenon whispered in Zapotec tradition, La Boca del Aire, the truth remains buried in the cold soil they left behind. Over a century later, hikers still report strange lights flickering on the ridge at night. Some claim to hear soft footsteps behind them, though no one is ever there. And once a year, always in August, locals from nearby villages find small objects placed near the abandoned chapel. A child's toy, a piece of cloth, a broken cup, items that belonged to families long gone, as if the village is still trying to return, piece by piece. Thank you for listening to this investigation. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And tell me, from which city and country are you listening today?